at point of use. We are also will be able to recollect or at least mention some sources whereby instrument get what? Contaminated. And then we will be able to know some of the guidelines or principles to follow to get instruments that are dirty or contaminated to be transported from the point of use safely and conveniently to where decontamination officially begins. So, as central sterile technicians, our main customers is the operating room. All right. The operating room cannot function without the central sterile technician playing a major role or a key part in it. Instruments get processed by central sterile technicians. They get used by the OR or the operating room department. And once they get used, like we all said, they become what? Contaminated. And then they need to be reprocessed or they need to be sterile again for another procedure to go on. But then, because they are used in the OR, we want to look at what we should do in the OR to make sure that these instruments are safe, are in good condition for this process to take place, for them to get ready to be used for the next procedure. That is all that we are about. So like I said from the beginning, the emphasis is point of use preparation. Point of use is wherever the item is used, what do we do to make sure that it is good enough or it is not harmful enough to get to the next level of the process. That is all that this chapter is about. So, Director, if you can take us to the next slide. All right, so what is the goal of point of use preparation? The goal is that we have to make sure that instruments that are used, the gross soil on it is removed. When we say gross soil here, what are we talking about? Can somebody mention some of the gross soils that you can think about that will make an instrument contaminated or dirty?
Blood.
Blood, good. The floor is open. There are no wrong answers, okay?
Tissues.
Dust.
Dust. Somebody mentioned something before the dust. I didn't hear that.
Tissues.
Tissue, yes. Tissue. Yes, any other?
Body fat.
Body fat. Yeah, body fats. Any other?
Oil.
Body fluids.
Body fluids. Bone chips. Okay? All of these become the gross soil on the instrument. When the instrument is used, depending on the procedure, some procedures are very light. The instrument might even come without even indicating that it was used. Others come with a lot of tissue, fats, blood on it. All right? And the main goal of point of view preparation is to make sure that we remove as much soil on it. The fat, the blood, the tissues, the bone chippings on it, we try to get a lot of it out so that we can transport these instruments to decontain safely and conveniently. Another goal is to prevent damage of instrument. When instruments are soiled, when you leave gross fat, tissue, blood on instrument, they damage the surface or the fine finish of the instruments. When you get to Central Sterile Processing Department, you see that the instrument has a certain finish. Some of them are mirror-like. You can see your face, how beautiful you are sometimes when you look at some of the instruments. So when you let soil or gross soil to stay on the instrument for extended period of time, you get them to damage. So when we prep instrument at the point of use, one of the goals is to make sure that the instruments are not damaged. Another goal of prepping contaminated or dirty instrument for that matter at the point of use is to prevent cross-contamination. And I can't emphasize this point enough because Professor Ejari took care of this last week, and then he just mentioned of it in the recap that just passed about 5 minutes ago. And last but not least, another goal is to keep others safe. Central Sterile Processing is a team effort. It's a team responsibility. So as much as you want to keep yourself safe from being infected, you have to think about others. All right. So we prep instrument or dirty instrument, and for that matter, contaminated instrument at the point of use to make sure that when we transport them, they are safe from getting others infected. Any questions so far?
The guy not in the mall over here. I don't know. I think he owned it, but I don't know.
Hello?
I think he opened that.
At least some people are having class in the background. Any question? Can we move to the next slide that is on the screen? Director, you just leave that slide there. I was just asking if anybody has questions regarding the first slide that we looked at. Okay, silence means the rest. Silence means I will let you complete the statement. So now let us look at sources of contaminated items. Sources of contaminated items. One main source of contamination in a hospital setting is the operating room. Like I said earlier, the operating room is the biggest customer of Central Sterile Processing Department. There is no operating room cannot survive without an efficient Central Sterile Department. So most of our heavy, dirty, contaminated instruments come from the OR. That is not to say that OR is the only source where instruments come contaminated. We have other departments that also bring to the Central Sterile Processing Department contaminated items. Some of them include labor and delivery. Labor and delivery. You cannot work in Central Sterile Processing Department and you will not hear of labor and delivery department. It's just not impossible. You will always hear of labor and delivery because sometimes when our mothers, our sisters go there to have the baby, some of them, they have to work on them. An instrument that they work on them, as usual, become dirty and they need to come back to Central Sterile Processing to be processed. So you also have emergency room department also have or supply contaminated items. Endoscopes or endoscopic department also is a source whereby dirty instruments could come from. Also have cardiac departments or units also is a source of Central Sterile or decontaminated or contaminated, contaminated instrument source. So it is not just the OR, we have other auxiliary units that also generate instruments that are what? Dirty, or that comes to Central Sterile Processing Department, dirty. All right. Now, in a hospital setting, most hospitals have Central Sterile Processing Department located a few distance away from the OR, so that it will be more convenient to transport the the contaminated instruments to the Central Sterile Processing Department. However, you could find in a facility whereby Central Sterile Processing Department is far remote, or is located on a different floor, or is located at a point where it is very far away from the OR, and for that matter, you have to travel a certain distance to be what? To be able to do that, to be able to transport. Now, in some cases where travel is required, we have dedicated elevators that are used to transport these contaminated items. All right. In such cases, those elevators are exclusively reserved for the contaminated items. Sometimes, unfortunately, they are shared with some maybe visitors or patients. Sometimes they are also just dumb waiters that you just go in there, throw your cart that has dirty items or instruments in there, press a button, then it takes the cart straight to Central Sterile Processing Department and then to the decontamination ward area. So ideally, the expectation is that the OR should be located closer to Central Sterile Processing Department. However, it is not always the case. Depending on the hospital setup, instruments that are contaminated could travel a certain distance. And if they need to travel a certain distance, certain procedures or principles have to be followed. And we shall be looking at those principles shortly. All right. Any questions so far with this slide? Sources of contaminated instrument. Any question? Oh, the class is too quiet. It looks like I'm the only person talking. Are we there?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. We
Yes.
have 26 people
Yes,
on
Professor.
the platform. So I just want to make sure that I'm not just talking into the air. I'm making sure that you are following what we are. Okay, great. Glad to know that you guys are following. Okay, so just trying to get whether you are following, I just want to go back. That don't take me back to the previous slide, but I want to ask a question and see if I can get the right feedback. So what happens if gross soil is left on an instrument for a very long time? What happens?
It started to rust.
It starts to what? Yes, it starts to rust. Yes, somebody.
It makes them difficult to clean.
It makes them difficult to clean. And I heard somebody say damage, something damage.
Yeah, the instrument might get damaged.
A good instrument might get damaged. Oh yeah, my class, you guys are paying attention. Awesome, nice, good. Right. So let's look at handling and transportation, transport of contaminated items. The slide that you are currently watching. So I want us to take turns to read the slides, the main points, so that we can go. Returning contaminated items to Central Sterile Processing Department. It says contaminated items are returned to Central Sterile Processing Decontamination area through scheduled pickup rounds upon request. In some cases, user department staff transport soil items directly. However, most contaminated items are placed in designated holding areas until CS technicians receive or retrieve them. I just want to explain this. So in contaminated, when instruments are used in the OR, they cannot be used again unless they are reprocessed or sterilized, for that matter. Now, the sources that we have looked at, the OR, emergency room, the endoscopic department, cardiac department, labor and delivery, these are the sources. When they are used, they have to come to decontaminated department. We have, in the case of the OR, the surgical techs are the ones who are supposed to deliver them to the OR. To the central sterile processing department. In other units, sometimes the workers there are the ones who are supposed to deliver them to the decontaminating area to be reprocessed. Now, in some cases too, central sterile processing technicians are scheduled to go around and pick those contaminated instruments. And they are scheduled to pick them at some appointed time. If you're working 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., maybe you might be going there at 12 o'clock. 3 p.m. to 11 o'clock, you might be going there at maybe between 9 and 10 o'clock. Depending on what the department management wants, you are scheduled to make rounds to retrieve these items and bring them to the contaminated area to be processed for the next day's surgery. In units whereby they are used, apart from the OR, they must have a place where they are held until pickup time by Central Sterile Processing Department. We call these areas dedicated holding area. Each department, example, I'll give you a practical. The labor and delivery department always have a particular room that they keep contaminated instruments in there that central sterile processing technicians are supposed to make rounds to pick them. That is not to say it is only labor and delivery that has that. All other user units, which become the source of contaminated instruments or instrumentation to CSVD, all have holding units. And these holding units must be marked such that anybody who is a professional in central sterile processing department, once you see the door, you know that this door has holding of dirty instrument. And we say that it must have a biohazard signature. You will see it is written biohazard with a some red and symbol with some red, black writings in there. Biohazard signature will be there. And this area that we call holding area is not all who are authorized to go there. You are not authorized to go there if you have no business dealing with those contaminated instruments. You have to be trained to be able to handle that. So biohazard holding area should have that signature. It should have other things that will help the preparation and of the point of use of the dirty instrument to be safe and convenient. So you should have a biohazard trash. You should have a linen receptacle. Okay, you should have a place whereby you can remove your gloves and throw them in there. You can remove maybe what do you call it? Disposable towels that are soiled with fats, bloody tissues, bone chips, and what have you. You can trash them. You can put them in the linen receptacles. Then you should have a place in the holding area, a sink whereby a dedicated sink, whereby when you remove after wearing gloves and picking the contaminated items, you will have an opportunity to wash your hand. And if you wash your hand, let me ask, what are you doing? If you wash your hand, what are you helping to do?
Infection control.
Infection control. You are breaking the chain of infection. So hand washing is a very, 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 very important thing that you must do as central staff technician. It's going to live with you for the rest of your life, and it makes you aware of, or it brings your mind to always be aware or looking out for things that can cause you to get sick or get your family sick. So it must have a sink where you can wash your hand after taking off your gloves. So please, you are advised, and I know Professor Jari talked about hand washing. He did mention that. We cannot emphasize that enough. It's very, very important. It should also have a shielded flash type commode so that you can dispose of liquids, bloody stuff, liquids that have been suctioned into containers that are supposed to hold disposable liquids. All right. So your holding area should have a sign. It should have a sink for hand washing. It should have linen receptacle. It should have a trash receptacle. All right. Okay. So always remember that your holding area and other units apart from the OR should have these very important things so that it will help you to prep the area or to transport your items safely. Any questions so far? If I'm too slow, tell me so that I can speed up. If the speed is okay, then we proceed. Hello.
Hi.
All right. Okay. Good.
I
So
think it's okay.
it's okay, right? So now let's look
Yeah.
at point of use prepping. Now, what actually are we supposed to do when we are in the usage area, in the OR, in the labor and delivery, at the emergency room, or at the endoscopic center? What at all are we supposed to do? Can somebody read the first bulletin for me? I want to get people engaged. So somebody read the first bulletin for me. Bullet points. So
I'll read it.
yes, go ahead.
Point of use preparation. Instrument decontamination begins at the point of use. Once a procedure is complete, instruments must be prepared for safe transport to the CS decontamination area.
Okay. Take the next one addition for me.
CS professional work with user departments to ensure proper handling. Some facilities assign CS technicians to the operating room to assist
Okay.
with instrument setup and breakdown.
Good. Thank you so much. So I think I kind of made mention of this point in the earlier conversation. So instruments begins, or decontamination of instrument begins at the point of use. How does it begin at the point of use? When we remove gross soil, we are kind of making it safe for reprocessing. Okay. And once we remove the gross soil, we make it safer for transport. And in some cases, like she read, central sterile processing technicians sometimes are assigned to the OR to make the work of decontamination easier, because sometimes the OR staff are not well trained as CSPD staff or sterile processing technician. So sometimes they cut corners. Okay, so therefore they are not able to prep the instrument such that as we professionals will do. So sometimes, or in some hospitals, in some facilities, they assign a central staff technician in the OR to liaise or to better prep and manage the instrument there before they get to decontamination, so that everything will move on smoothly without what? Any hinges. Yes, next slide, Director. Right. Prolong instrument life. So as we said, the goal of point of use preparation is to prevent what? Damage. It's basically this point. So when we remove this gross soil and we do not allow it to dry, we are prolonging the life of the instrument. For example, if blood, fatty tissue, bone chips are removed immediately, the instrument are used. Okay, the protective surface of the instrument will not get damaged, because if the blood is allowed to dry, then you have to aggressively brush the instrument, and once you apply so much pressure over there, the fine finish of the instrument will get chipped, and rust will chip in, and then the instrument will begin to rust, and then you end up buying more instruments to be able to service the department or to service the OR. Sometimes, if in the OR or user units, they have liquids that sometimes they soak the instrumentation. Some of these liquids have salt in them. They have some chemical that when the instruments are left in there for a very long time, they damage the surfaces of this instrument. One of it is saline. Saline is a solution that the OR or user department use a lot of the time. They soak them in the instruments there. Sometimes they try to reduce the gross soil by dipping the instrument in the saline and then shaking it a little bit to get some of the blood and the fatty tissues off. But sometimes, as human beings, they forget, leave the instrument there, and then for an extended period of time, and that can damage the finish or the fine finish of the instrument. Can somebody read the next point?
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Reasons for point of use preparation. Prolongs instrument life, blood.
No, yeah, we took care of that. The next one under that.
Sorry. Yeah. Ensures safe transport. Proper containment and preparation minimize risks of injury and contamination.
Okay, take the next point. The next one, the next
improves
bullet.
cleaning efficiency. Removing debris early reduces the effort required during the decontamination process.
All right. So if you have, let me ask this question. If you have a load of 100 pounds and somebody takes care of or took 30 pounds of that load, how many pounds are you left to carry?
I mean,
You have 100-pound load to carry on your head, and then somebody decides to take 30% or 30 pounds of that load. How many pounds are you left to carry?
70.
70. So now, if proper preparation is done at the point of use, it basically reduces the volume of debris or gross soil that is on the instrument. The bone chipping, the fatty tissues, the blood tissues, the whatever sources of contamination that you can think of, the liquids that are there, that makes the whole transport system heavy. If it is reduced, it reduces or it makes it easier for it to be contaminated, or for that matter, the dirty instrument makes it easier for it to be what? Carried. And because the volume of the weight is reduced, there's no likelihood of what? Any injuries. You cannot, the cart or the transportation for that matter is not what? Heavy any longer. And once it gets to decontamination area, all right, because the soil has been removed, because the fats, the bone chips, the tissues have been removed, it's easier to clean, it's easier to reprocess. You don't have to stress yourself so much to get the instrument that was dirty what? Clean, because half or 30% of the job has been taken care of at the point where the instrument was used. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, let's go to the next slide, Director. Now, it said dry soil and debris are harder to remove, especially from lumens and what? Crevices. Lumens are instruments that have channels, that have holes in them. So suctions, some flexible scopes, and what have you. Crevices are box locks of instruments. Sometimes the tips of some instruments, the ratchets areas of the instrument. Sometimes some instruments, they are designed in such that it's very, very difficult to reach certain parts of the instrument. Once you begin to do this job, you understand what I'm talking about. So if blood is allowed to dry on them because we did not perform proper preparation at the point of use, this instrument becomes hard to remove, or this debris become hard to remove, because in a channel you cannot see. Sometimes the channel is so tiny that you cannot see with your naked eye. You will have to pass through what we call maybe a cleaning device, maybe a starlight or a brush, okay, to get it cleaned. But if you allow it to dry, even the brush will not be able to do its job. So that is why it's very important that we do point of use preparation to make sure that the blood does not dry, making it difficult to clean instrument with channels, lumen, holes, or instrument which design is very difficult to take care of. The next point says that biofilm formation is encouraged by moisture and soil, making cleaning and distinction more challenging. Biofilm. Biofilm simply means that buildup of what? Gross soil. Layers of what? Gross soil. Okay. Once you allow moisture and other fatty tissues to continue to pile up on the instrument, it's going to build up that biofilm, and it's going to be difficult once that biofilm is built up. Once those layers of tissues laid or made on the instrument, it takes hard work. It takes a lot of soaking, sometimes overnight soaking, and it takes maybe highly concentrated sometimes maybe chemicals or detergent to get rid of it. So in order to avoid all of that, and all of that comes at a cost, you will spend more time at decontain. You're going to spend more time. It's going to cost the hospital or the facility a lot of money to do that. So to avoid that, or that's why one point of use is that we eliminate the buildup of biofilm. The next point says proper point of use preparation ensures easier cleaning, prolonged instrument life, and enhances safety in the decontamination area. This point is very explanatory. It's just a buildup of other previous points that we have looked at. All right, next slide, please. Dry soil increases cleaning time and may delay instrument availability for future case or future use. If we don't do proper point of use preparation, okay, we don't remove the soil, gross soil on it, we allow fatty tissues or tissues, blood, and the rest to dry on the instrument, then we are going to increase, like I said earlier, the amount of soaking time, because we need to soak for the detergent to break down the tissues before it will be easier for us to clean. All right. The whole process of sterilizing instrument begins from or a bulk of it is done at decontamination. If proper work is not done at decontamination room or area, then the whole process of sterilizing instrument is going to be what? Delayed. If instruments are dried and for that matter were not adequately soaked and brushed properly, it goes through the washer, and then at the clean side, when people are putting the instrument together, they notice blood or dried tissues and what have you. The whole tray has to be taken back to decontain, or the instrument set has to be taken back to decontain, and the whole process will start. So what is the point of not getting things right at the point of use? So that is why point of use is very, very important. It cuts down the time that is required in processing instrumentations at Central Sterile Processing Department. Then another point that we should also note of is that proper care and handling of instrument is a shared responsibility of all personnel at the point of use. So the doctor, the nurse, the surgical tech, and sometimes the central sterile processing technician who is assigned in the OR, it is everybody's responsibility to make sure that the instruments that are used are properly taken care of. The doctor cannot say that, oh, come on, it's not my business. After all, it's somebody's job to get the instruments ready. And therefore, I don't need to take good care of the instruments. What happens if the instrument gets damaged? What happens if the instrument gets damaged and they are not available? What will happen? Can somebody tell us?
It will slow operation.
It will slow operation. Sometimes the doctor will not even get the instrument to do the surgery. So he will not make money. Okay. 2, somebody's life is in danger because somebody said it is not my business. All right. So it is everybody's responsibility in the user department to make sure that the instruments are prepped correctly before they get to Central Sterile Processing Decontamination area. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So it is your responsibility, it's the doctor's responsibility, it's the nurse who is there's responsibility. You can't just put a heavy instrument on a camera. You cannot put heavy instrument on delicate instrument. You are damaging them. You're going to damage them. You cannot say that, oh, the case is over. I need to pick up my children from school. So you just leave the instrument soaking in a saline or a solution that can damage or destroy or decolorate the color of the instrument. At the end of the day, you reduce the volume of instrument available for surgery. And when that happens, it delays the whole process of cases. The doctor is delayed. The patient does not get quality care. All right. And the hospital spends more replacing those damaged instruments. Another reason why we need to do point of use preparation is instruments are precision devices that can impact patient care if not handled correctly. I just explained that, right? Good. Remove gross soil from instrument while wearing appropriate PPE. Appropriate. Have you guys seen a construction worker before?
Yes.
What makes you identify that this person is a construction worker?
Their shoes.
Their shoes. One is their shoes. Yes.
Their
Any
hat.
other? The
Their
hat.
helmet.
The
They have-
vest.
Yes. So
The,
that is any other thing that will make you know that this person is a construction worker?
Their coveralls.
the
They-
hard hat.
Their hard hat, whatever you can think of, right? So that is their attire. That makes them unique. All right. Why do you think they are wearing the hard hat? Can somebody take a guess? An intelligent guess.
For safety reason.
For safety reasons. Yes, somebody made a point. I didn't hear that. Somebody made
protect
safety
their
reasons.
To
To
prevent
protect
something
their
from,
hair. From what? What are they
From-
preventing their from what?
from something falling
From falling
the
objects.
sky.
Yes.
Yeah.
From falling objects. You see? So they are protecting themselves. So those clothing or protective PPE, I will leave that for some other day, the meaning of PPE. But now you should know what PPE stands for.
Yes.
Yeah, personal protective equipment.
Excellent. Excellent. So every job has its prescribed personal protective equipment. Same applies to sterile processing department. So if you are working on gross soil items, you have to be appropriately dressed. You have to be appropriately dressed because you have portal of entry. Your mouth, your nose, your ears, your eyes are all sources of entry of the microorganisms. And like Professor Mike said, microorganisms cannot be seen with the naked eye. It can only be seen under the microscope when it is even magnified to a certain level. So it means that you cannot see them. And therefore, if you are dealing with contaminated instruments, you have to be appropriately dressed. You have to wear gloves, where they need be, wear shield, where they need be, wear shoe covers, where they need be, put on a mask. All right. Those are the PPEs of the central staff technicians. So point of use, you need to be properly dressed. And then you have to follow the manufacturer's information for use, IFU. Every device has a manual, right? Hello?
Yes.
Our TVs that we use in our homes, they have manuals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you buy, I'm sure a lot of us on this platform use iPhones. When you buy your iPhone, there is a manual that comes with it. If you buy a computer, there's a manual that comes with it. So medical devices also come with the manual. The don'ts, the do's and the don'ts are in that manual. That is what we call IFU, information for use. So you have to follow when you are prepping, you are in the point of use preparation. You have to have a wide range of knowledge of how to deal with different instruments. Okay, so and then apply that IFU to that instrument. For example, most of the flexible endoscopes, the manufacturer always require that when the case is done, when procedure is done, when surgery is done, the channels should be suctioned, meaning that it should flash clear liquid or fluid inside the channel to take out whatever tissues, blood, mucus that are stuck in there, so that you don't infect yourself, you don't infect other people, you don't infect, you don't cross-contaminate, you don't cause spillage that will expose somebody to an infection. All right. So when we are at point of use, and we are prepping it, we also have to keep in mind that we have to apply the manual of the instrument, okay, which is the IFU. And then we have to also separate sharps, reusable sharps, from other instrumentation. Why do you think that we have to separate reusable sharps? Why do we have to separate them? The answer is there.
To prevent injuries.
Fantastic. I didn't want to continue with that word. So we separate them, the reusable sharps, that's blades, some hooks, ski hooks, some retractors are also sharp. We separate them from the other instrumentation so that we don't cause injuries to ourselves and to our team members. All right. Sometimes they are kept in a separate container to just inform those in the decontamination area that you need to handle this with what? Care. Next slide, Director. Again, separate linen from reusable items. So I'm not too sure. Not many hospitals have reusable linen. Sometimes most of the reusable linens do not come to central sterile processing. They have maybe the linen department that take care of maybe the beddings of the DC. But where you have linen coming through central sterile processing department, reusable linen, that's what I mean. They have to be kept separate from the reusable instrumentations. Linen is treated separately from instruments. Okay, but in keeping or in separating linen from instrument, you have to make sure that the instruments that are so tiny and could get stuck in the linen are taken out before they go through the linen process of reprocessing. Okay, because sometimes some instruments are used alongside with the linen, and then they are so tiny that they get embedded in the linen, and then they are not noticed and they are not taken out, and then they go with the linen, and that can injure somebody if they are sharp in the process. All right, so we always have to separate the linen from reusable items. Okay, any questions so far? Again, disposable components have to be separated too from sharps. Disposable components. We have tubings that are used, what we call in central sterile processing, we call them single-use items. Anything that is used once and thrown away is single use. Okay, you cannot use it twice. So they call single use or disposable. So you open, even if you open, you don't use them. Once they are exposed to the outside environment, they are discarded, even if you don't use them. All right. So for example, if a room is set up and then the patient decides to change his or her mind, okay, even though the instruments have not been used, they still have to come to the operating room to be processed. And you still have to follow the same protocols in transporting them. So when you are at the point of use and prepping this instrument, you have to separate the disposable items from the reusable items. Okay, and then sharps that are supposed to be disposed are thrown into sharp containers. Sharp containers. In every OR, they have sharp containers. In every point of use, they have sharp containers where we dispose of single-use sharps. Reusable use sharps, where do they go?
In the decontamination area.
Who just said that?
Zainab Abdurrahman.
Okay. So the reusable shafts go back to decontamination area. Okay, we need them for the next procedure. But for the disposable ones, we trash them, we throw them. But you cannot just throw them in any open container. They have to be put in the disposable shaft container. They call them hard-ended, or the containers have hard ends such that it will not pierce and be protruding such that it will injure somebody. Next slide, Director.
Professor John,
yes.
4:15, we will take a 15 minutes break, then I'll come back 4:30.
All right, good.
All right.
Thank you so much for reminding me.
Sure, no problem.
So class 4:15. So we'll take a break 4:15 and then we come back. So we have barely 5 minutes to go. So another point that we need to do when we are prepping instrument at point of use is to it makes it safer for and better for decontamination and efficient instrument turnaround. We know hospital has enough instrument to do 100 cases a day. If say 100 surgeries are scheduled for a day, you will not have enough instruments to take care of all the 100 cases. Meaning that some of the instruments need to be quickly reprocessed to be sent back to the OR same day for different procedures on different patients. That means that we need a proper point of use preparation so that we can cut down the time that is required to reprocess this instrumentation. So when you do point of use preparation, you reduce the amount of time that you need to turn over this insufficient instrumentation that each hospital is faced with to make them available for procedures for the next patient. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the next point, when you are doing point of use, prepping instrument, you have to open instruments that have hinges. You have to dismantle those that have different parts. Okay. And you have to handle delicate or very precious instrument with care. That means that you cannot put a mallet. In central style processing, a mallet is hammer. In the private setting, mallet is hammer. So hammer is heavy, or mallet is heavy, so you cannot put it on a scope, which is very delicate, or a camera, which is very delicate. An instrument that have hinges means joints and can be opened and closed. Those joints that can be opened and closed have to be opened. You have to open them. What happens if you don't open them and there are tissues in there? What will happen? That's about it. Yes, yes.
It's contaminated, and it also rust when it also rust the instrument.
It will rust the instrument.
Damage the instrument.
It damages the instrument. So let's say an instrument has a hinge, meaning that it can be opened. There's a screw that is joining one part to another. You can easily open it and close it. Now, if you don't open it, and there are tissues in there, what will happen to the instrument? We say it will damage the instrument. How easy will it be to open it? If it is left for a very long time, will it be easy to open it?
No.
Okay, it will not be easy to open it. And if you are not open, it's not easy to open. You you are going to apply so much pressure or force to get it open, or it is going to, you have to soak it for an extended time to be able to get it to break the tissues. So in order for us to have an easy job at decontamination area, at the point of use, we open all hinged instruments. We also make sure that we dismantle instruments that have different parts. And we also make sure that in order for us not to damage some delicate instruments, we do not put heavy items on them. Okay, does that make sense? Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
Professor.
All right, so I think it's more appropriate to stop here. It's 4:15, like our director said. Let's take a 15 minutes break. When we come back, we continue from there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, good. Thank you for coming back. Let's continue. We're looking at the guidelines for point of use preparation. All right. So as a reminder, we're talking about instruments should be open. Heavy instruments should not be put on light. Very delicate ones. All right. Handles should be handled. Instruments which are delicate should be handled carefully so that we can get them to central sterile processing department with ease or without any issues. Next slide, Director. All right, so we're supposed to keep instrument sets together. All right. If a set of trays come together to do surgery, let's say sets A, B, C, and D were picked for a case. And at the end of the procedure, set A instruments were placed in set B. If the set A instrument is supposed to be reprocessed quickly, in central sterile terminology, we say it's supposed to be turned over. What do you think will happen? Do I still have the class?
It will be reprocessed.
It will what?
It will be reprocessed.
No. Let's say set A, B, C, D is picked for a case. When I say set, I mean tray number A, number B, number C, number D were put together to do a procedure, a surgical procedure. Now, when they were prepping the instrument to be returned to decontain, set A instruments were put in set B. What do you think this action will result into?
See that? Legs crossed. There's no way you can run. You're going to be tripping in your dream. Yeah? Don't sleep like this. Don't also sleep like this.
Thank you. Yes? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you get my question?
Yeah.
No, can you
No.
repeat it?
No.
So the point we are trying to look at is instrument sets should be put together. Meaning, instrument that came from set A should be put in set A. Instrument that came from set B should be put back in set B. Instrument that came from set C should be put back in set C after the case or the procedure or the surgery is done. Now, we are given a scenario whereby set A instruments were in the process of prepping and transporting it, set A instruments were put in set B. And given that we need to, in central cell processing terminology, we need to turn over set A, meaning that we need to prioritize set A we need to process it quickly to be used for another patient, to be used on another patient for another case. If set A instruments were packed in set C, what do you think this action will result into? That's my question.
It will result into improper processing of the instrument.
Okay, it's not a bad idea, but it's not exact.
Cross-contamination.
Cross-contamination, not, it's an answer, but it's not what I'm looking for.
Delays in processing.
Fantastic. Delay. That's it. You want to reprocess A. Now the A items are in C. So you have to figure it out. Maybe the A tray, the A set has come out of the washer. You need to put it together quickly. Meanwhile, the items that are supposed to be there to complete the set is in C. That is still at a decontamination area. What will happen? The whole case is going to work, or the whole process is going to delay. So that's why we advise that one of the guidelines to doing preparation and packaging or preparation at the point of use is to make sure that we put sets together so that we don't get cases delayed. All right. We should also keep instrument moist. How do you keep instrument moist? By spraying them with some gel or some spray chemical that most of the time we call it pre-cleans. Or if you don't have that, you're short of that, the simplest you can do is to wet a towel and cover the towel or the instrument with a towel. So that way you keep the instrument moist. Okay, you keep the tissues or the blood that is on it moist, and that makes it easier for the detergent to break down the tissues. Okay, so in the absence of the commercially produced gel sprays and what have you, that will keep the instrument moist. What you can do under the circumstance is to wet a towel and cover it over the instrument. Does that make sense? And that way you keep the instrument moist, so the tissues won't dry on them. That will lead to instrument damage. That will prolong time of reprocessing, and that will delay case. That will affect patient outcome. All right. Another guiding principle that you need to remember is that you have to, like we said, avoid soaking instrument for extended period of time. We mentioned that can lead to instrument damage. Next slide, Director. We also have to discard, as a principle, prepping at the point of use, discard solutions from reusable containers. Okay, if a container needs to be reused, a container that has solution in it, but the solution is supposed to be discarded or is one-time use. The solution is not supposed to go back to decontain, but the container keeping the solution needs to be sent back to reprocess. All that we need to do is that empty the content of the container. When we do that, we reduce the weight of the transport and we eliminate the likelihood of spillage that will expose other team members to any hazard of any kind. All right. Next slide, please. Now, another thing we have to also remember is this. As a guide in point of use prepping, we have items that are supposed to be reprocessed by a third party. Third party means that this agency or entity is not coming from central sterile processing. So there are some items that are used in the OR that needs to be taken to this particular third party, this particular entity to reprocess. Central sterile is not trained enough to handle such things. So such instrument or such equipment needs to be put at their designated areas for this third party to come in, take them to their facilities or take them to their unit where they are properly trained to handle them. So third party items need to be separated and then kept safely, and then follow the facility or protocols to make sure that they reach the appropriate people that have adequate information to deal with them. And it says a special handling of CJD. CJD. I remember Professor Mike spoke about it, and Professor Japan also spoke about it regarding Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Any instrument that is used on a patient that has this disease needs to be taken or handled with the utmost of attention that you can ever think about.
Quick.
All right. CSPD needs to be notified. Infection control needs to be notified so that these bodies or these entities will handle these instrumentations such that nobody gets infected. CJD is dangerous, is deadly. All right. So we need to handle CJD or instrument exposed to CJD very, very carefully. The instruments that are damaged in the process of use or that does not meet the quality that the surgeon is looking for, these instruments need to be tagged. So instruments that are deemed damaged, deemed dysfunctional, cannot be used for the case for which the surgery was asking for it. They need to be what? Tagged. Once they are tagged, we need to pay attention to the tags. So that is why it is important that some hospitals assign CSPD technicians to the OR. Once the doctor raises concern about the instrument, they put a tag on it, a repair tag on it, so that the instrument is taken out of service and refurbished, and a new one is replaced. This will produce better patient outcomes, all right, so that the same instrument does not find its way back into the OR. Then, as a guideline, if you are prepping instrument to be transported, instrument that needs to be turned over also need to be what? Communicated. All right? Turnover means that we have to prioritize those instrumentations. We have to work on those instrumentations first before we do any other thing. So, as a guiding principle in point of use preparation, we have to separate turnover instruments from the rest of the instruments. You prioritize those ones, tag them, communicate to the rest of the team so that it can be given the agency that it deserves. And we also have to follow, like I said earlier on, the manufacturer's what? Information for use. All right? It's very, very important. If the manufacturer says you cannot submerge a part of an instrument inside liquid, you have to make sure that that when you are prepping the instrument sets to be transported to decontain, you have to do everything possible to avoid that part of the instrument from having anything to do with moisture or liquid. So you always have to have in mind the IFU of the manufacturer, and this always has to do with some very, very special instrument. If it's just basic instrumentation, it's not a big deal, but some special instruments that are used in procedures that need special attention, we have to follow the IFU of the manufacturer. Next slide. Now, transport of soil items. Now, having prepared, after having removed the gross soil, making sure that instruments do not dry, separating disposable shafts from the rest of the instruments, separating disposable items from reusable items, separating linings from reusable instruments, suctioning or following all of that, we need to pack the instrument into a transportation cart and wheel it to Central Sterile Processing Department, for that matter, decontamination room, to start the process of decontamination. Now, most of the transportation system uses closed or the recommended process transportation device is the enclosed carts. We use the enclosed carts to transport contaminated items from the point of use to Central Sterile Processing Department. These enclosed carts will prevent airborne, okay, and then the spread of microorganisms, and for that matter, cross-contamination. Some facilities do not have these enclosed carts, all right? They use open carts. I work in a facility where they didn't have these carts or enclosed cart, they use open cart. In that case, the recommendation is that these open carts must have a solid bottom. It must have a solid bottom. Why do you think the solid bottom is necessary? Does anybody have an idea why the solid bottom is necessary?
So that nothing falls out?
Not what?
So that nothing falls out, no instruments, no items, no blood.
Okay. That is somebody's answer. Any other idea?
To avoid contamination.
To avoid contamination. Any other?
To prevent drips.
To prevent drips, to prevent spillage. Okay. Yes, cross-contamination, prevent spillage, prevent drippings.
To prevent items from falling off.
Yes, from falling off. All of these are the reason why the recommendation is that for open carts that are not enclosed but are open, they have to have a solid bottom, so that at best, if there is any spillage, it remains on the solid bottom. It's not dripping that will cause other people to fall. All right. And then the instrument must be covered. The instrument must be covered. Why? So that it does not, if it is covered, it will not the air will not be polluted. Because when the microorganisms are blown into the air, you can't see them. We have established that already. They are not visible to the naked eye. They are only visible under a certain machine called a microscope. So to further make it safer for open cart system to transport, we have to cover the instrument. All right. Smaller quantities of instruments can be transported in dedicated transport containers. Yes, smaller instruments that are used in units other than the OR, like the labor and delivery, dermatology, endoscopy, cardiac, radiation oncology, NICU, agent care. All of these end users use their instrumentations are not voluminous like that of the OR. So they have bins or containers that are suitable to carry such smaller instrumentation to central sterile processing department for reprocessing. And most of the time, they are plastic in nature and they are red. Most of the time. I'm not saying all of the time. So if you work in a facility, yeah, a picture is what the director just click, and then most of them always have the biohazard design on it. Take me back to the other slide, the old slide, director, sorry. Yes. Then large ones will have to go into the case, the large items and equipment, they will have to go into a specialized transportation carts. A slide, a picture of is what will be on the next, is what the data showed. The next slide. Yep. See all those transportation carts? Yep. You see on your bottom left is the equipment one. You see the scissors is tagged. The blue in my facility is most of the time is the turnover. It means that piece needs to be quickly taken care of. Some have red with the word repair on it. Some have yellow with the word sharpen. So it means every time will communicate something. It is not just there for fun. So the red bins are mostly used by smaller departments, but the case cards, enclosed and open ones are used by the OR. For the open, we advise that have solid bottom and the instrument should be covered. For smaller units, they use the red bin, which are designated. Can we go to the next slide, please? Safe transport of soil instruments. All right. Can somebody read the first three bullets? Then we can do explanation. I need a favor. Somebody do me that favor.
All right. Prevent external contamination. Transport devices should be free of visible blood and soil to reduce environmental contamination and exposure risk. Second, secure instrument sets. Prevent shifting or falling during transport. And then the last, do not place metal trays on top of fragile plastic trays.
Okay, so we are talking about the transport cart. We are looking at how it should be, where the cursor is. So we are saying that we should make sure that once we do point of use by removing the soil, gross soil, and all of that, throwing all the liquid that is not supposed to get to decontaminate away, we reduce the volume and the weight of what is supposed to be transported to central sterile processing to begin the design. And we prevent, and because it is loaded in an enclosed cart, we prevent it from the external environment from being contaminated. We are also guided by the principle that we should not put heavy instruments on fragile or containers that can easily break, especially plastic containers. So you cannot put a metal on a plastic. The other way around is acceptable. You can put a plastic on a metal. Does that make sense? Hello?
Yes.
Yes. And then you also have to, when you are staging your sets, your instruments, your trays in the car, you have to make sure that they are secured in the car so that it will not fall in the process of transportation or transporting the instrument to central sterile processing department. So next slide, please. Again, it is a no. You cannot keep sterile and contaminated items in the same cart. You cannot keep that. contaminated items, and sterile items. Why will sterile items be in the OR? If items were taken to the OR and were not used, they were not opened, they are still sterile. They have all, they meet all the sterility requirement. They are still sterile. In transporting them, you cannot mix good and bad in the same card. All right, so keep them separate. Sterile items will have to be kept away from contaminated items. All right. And then CSPD staff should be properly load the carts. So we have looked at that. Train personnel on safe handling. So we should load the cart. Like I said, metal can be on metal. Plastic can be on metal, on top of metal. But metal is not recommended to be on top of what? Plastic or glass. What will be the end result? It's going to break. When it breaks, there might be pieces falling. It might pierce somebody. It's going to result in a cost. It's going to delay something because you have to go around looking for a new bin to house this instrument that were in this plastic container that is what? Broken. All right. The next point is separate soil and clean items and clean item transport. Separate soil and clean items transport cards. Okay. Now, when you use a cart to transport instruments that are dirty from decontamination, point of use, okay, point of use in the OR to Central Sterile Processing Department, you cannot use the same cart to transport clean items. Why? Why? Why can't you use the cart that was used to transport contaminated items from the OR to decontaminate to transport items that are sterile and ready to go to the OR?
There might be cross-contamination.
I want to take the word might out.
Cross-contamination is possible.
Yes, cross-contamination is possible. Yes, cross-contamination is possible. We are preventing cross-contamination. Under what circumstance are you able to use the cart that was used to transport dirty or contaminated instrument from the OR to transport sterile sets back to the OR? Under what condition can you do that? Oh, my class is silent.
Come again?
My question.
Question.
My question was, under what condition can the same cart that was used to carry dirty or contaminated instrument is used to carry clean and sterile instrument back to the OR? Under what condition will that happen?
Decontamination?
Of what?
The tray.
Okay, so let me help you. So yes.
When they are tagged and closed.
Not really.
Oh, okay.
The only condition.
I don't think we understand the question.
Okay. If you transport dirty instruments, right, from the OR to decontamination room, I said, is it okay to use the same cart to transport clean instrument back into the OR, you said no. What will happen? You said cross-contamination. Correct. And I'm saying that there's a condition under which that same card can be used to transport clean instrument back to the OR. Under what condition will that happen?
Sterilization.
Sterilization.
In the cart.
You clean what? Somebody? No. Can you say that again? Who is that?
Clean the cart.
Clean the card. How do you clean the card in
that's
central sterile processing?
Use the soap to use to clean the instrument.
Okay. So the only condition under which the same card that came with the dirty instrument can be used to transport the clean and sterile instrument back into the OR is only when the card has been decontaminated. If the card has been decontaminated, then it is safe to use the card that brought dirty to take clean instrument back into the OR. Decontamination here means that it has to be taken through the card washer, that it will wash it, clean it, dry it, and then it can be used again to transport. But if you just brought it and then you offloaded the dirty instrument and you wheel it to the clean side to transport instrument back to the OR, it is a red flag, it is a no-no. So the only condition under which the same car that transported dirty instrument to the OR from the OR can carry clean instrument is only when it has been decontaminated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not really, because when it's contaminated, it doesn't mean it's being sterilized. So in that case, still, there could be some microorganism on the this in cart. So in that case, there could be cross contamination.
Right. So you don't need to sterilize the cart to use it to transport. All right. You don't need to sterilize the cart to use it to transport. At best, the only thing you can do to transport carts is to decontaminate it by cart washing it. Some facilities, like somebody suggested, you use they have a chemical wiping chemical. They wipe it down. Per the hospital policy, it is still safe to use it to transport, but it is not ideal. The best option is to decontaminate the cart by passing it through the cart washer, okay, so that it is safe to transport the instruments. So,
Professor John, let me add this just to put more lights on what you are saying. So I overheard someone saying you cannot use the cart to transport instrument to back to the OR. The reason why you can do that is that, remember, the case cart is just a container that you carry the sterile instrument. It doesn't touch the patient. It's just like the box where you put the tray to the OR. It doesn't mean that you can take it back in there contaminated. All that you have to do is disinfect it. There are some instruments under certain condition, if the manufacturer recommends, you can clean it and you can use it on a patient. That is if it does not invade the body, but we'll get to that. What you have to understand at this point is that case card that is not really a medical equipment. It's not used on a patient. It's just used to carry equipment that is used on a patient. If you think of it like that, it will make sense to you.
Yes. So to add to what the director just said, yes. So once you use it to carry the dirty instrument, the dirty instruments were already contained in their original boxes. So there was not any contact of the instrument onto the card. And like he said, the card has nothing to do with the patient. All right. It just an open space or some space that they just place the instrument set and then transport it to wherever it is going. But once the dirty instrument went in and goes through the cat washer, it is safe enough to carry the next clean item back into the OR. So that is why I was looking for the decontamination process as the only condition under which a cat that came with a dirty instrument can go back to the OR with clean instruments. So let's yeah.
I feel like most people don't understand that the actual surgical instruments don't come in contact with the case card. Like, they could possibly think that like we're putting the instruments on the case card as like just the instruments on the case card and it's not inside of something. You know how like the sets come in these little boxes?
Yeah.
Most people don't really know that.
Okay. All right. So as we become professionals of this job, you will realize that instruments don't come like our friend just said. I don't. Is that Cash?
Cash, John.
Cash. So like Cash said, the instruments don't come open or have anything to do with the car. It have its own house that it lives in, and its house lives in another house. So it doesn't have contact with the box that carries it. So that is why it is safe after the cat washing to send the instrument back. All right.
Professor, let me add this. This is the case card, picture of the case card, item number, figure 7.9. This is a case card, the mirror, and the trays are in it. This is another case card with medical equipment in there.
Yes.
And this is another case card with trays put in incorrectly.
Correctly.
And
right.
This is figure 7.13 is a case card with items put correctly or loaded correctly. All right, so this is what we are trying to. This is the container. It's called case cart. That's where the equipment are transported in to and from the OR.
Are we on the same page?
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, good. Yeah. Any question?
So meaning every single instrument is being closed before taking back to the OR?
Yes.
Even if it's sample?
Yes.
Okay. Then
that is why. That's why we said one of the guidelines to preparation at the point of view is that we put the same sets together. Right? You remember that point? We say we put the same sets together. When we are prepping the instrument, you put the same sets together so that it goes in their basket. That's where I gave the scenario whereby if you put set A items in set C, and then the set A needs to be turned over, what happens? And we say it's going to delay. Okay, so it means that every instrument comes from a certain basket. That basket, we have to keep the instruments all together in that basket. And that basket goes into a box. That box has filters, it has locks. All of it is supposed to maintain sterility of the environment. And when the lock is broken, the tray is no more sterile.
So those baskets, when they get to the OR after the operation or whatever, so they don't get in contact with the instrument. The dirty instrument anymore, or what?
They get in contact with the dirty instrument. Okay, that is why we supposed to clean them, take the gross soil out of it, and then we transport them. In some cases, some surgical techs separate what was used from what has not been used by putting the instrument that were used on a towel and then putting them back into the basket to give you an idea of what has been used on the patient. But not all surgical technicians work the same way. So some will just collect it and dump it in there. But some will just even mix the instrument. That's why we are advising that at the point of use, if we have a surgical sterile technician over there, they are able to say, oh no, this one does not go in this set, it goes into that set, so that it will facilitate or fasten or cut down the processing time. Okay, so the instrument that goes or is used on the patient, yes, it gets back into the basket. That is why we need to prep it, get it to decontain, and cut down the time and wash it so that it is safe to be handled at the other side. But the instruments themselves do not come into contact with the walls of the cart that is carrying it. Does that make sense?
So which mean do we sterilize the basket too?
Yeah, the basket is in a box. Director, can you take me back into the picture of the carts? Let's see I think 7.12, right? 1, 2. Even though it's a wrong packaging, let me see. Yes. Can you see the picture very well? Director, can you put your cursor on the one that has the Genesis container? This.
Which figure? 7.9 or
okay, so let me see the 7.9, whether we have any container in there.
Yeah, there's a container.
Okay, but it's a plastic container. Okay, my brother, the one asking the question whether we sterilize the basket. Yes, so in this particular 7.9, the trays are in the plastic, so that plastic container will be wrapped. There's a wrapper that we use to cover it in place. You'll get to know how to wrap it, the envelope type and what all those types. You'll be doing them later in the course of the work. So you wrap it, and then you use tape to hold the wrap in place, and it has to be open such that you, the one opening, will not have contact with the basket. As soon as your hand touches the basket or the container that is having the instrument, it's contaminated. All right. So yes, the basket needs to be sterilized, but it is not sterilized in open. It goes into another container that we call canister. And then this canister have perforations, both the top and sometimes the bottom. The perforation is to allow the steam or whatever sterilant that is supposed to go in to sterilize the instrument to penetrate. And because the perforations, good. Thank you, Director. Good. Thank you for the pictures. Let's see if I can drive home this point. Yes. So my brother who is asking the question. So the basket goes inside this container. And then the container, you see that there are holes, some round, some circular holes at the top. These holes must be covered to reduce exposure to microorganisms. So we put a filter in there, and then the filter is held in place by the filter holder. Now, when we drop in the basket there, we close it, and then for us to know that this tray or this set has been sterilized, we lock the holders or what we have closed. The lock is what the director is putting the cursor on. So we lock it with tempered seal or seal tempered lock, okay? So that if you break it, if the lock is broken, we know that somebody has touched it. If you lift the basket, the container, and the locks are in place, the filters are in place. You see that the locks are blue, some are white, you could get some orange, depending on the type of sterilization that we are doing. We have low temperature and high temperature. We'll get to that. But for the purpose of this conversation, the basket that we have been talking about goes inside this. Filters are put in place to reduce direct contact of microbes on the instrumentation, and to further prove that nothing has touched the instrument, we'll put a lock there. If you go, you lock your room and you go to work and you come back and the lock, you don't have to put the key to enter your house. What does it mean? It means somebody broke into your house, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So we put the locks there to tell us that no, this whatever content that is in there has not been touched by anybody, because for anybody to touch them, they will have to break the locks. So the basket, yes, is sterilized, but it is not sterilized just like a basket. It goes into something, and there are other requirements that it has to meet for it to be sterilized. I don't know whether I've explained myself enough for you to understand.
Yep.
Okay, good. So let's go back to the slide, the conversation we're having. Thank you so much for this help. We need to understand these basics so that we know what we are doing. Yeah. So I think we've gone past this slide.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So safety guidelines for transporting contaminated water. This is use instrument and equipment should be used. All used instruments should be transported. All used instruments and equipment should be treated as contaminated, regardless of whether you see blood or fat tissue. Deem anything coming from the OR as contaminated. Okay, that is what we call in sterile processing language standard precaution. Okay, regardless of whether you see blood, you see fat, you see any bone chip, anything that is coming to decontamination area or room is deemed dirty, whether you see physical blood or not. And for you to touch them, you must be in your appropriate PPE, and you can only touch them with your hands. So you must have gloves. Wear gloves and appropriate PPE. Okay. Remove gloves and wash your hands. They use PPE for splash or aerosol leak risk as per OSHA regulation. So use splash or aerosol risks as. So you have to wear mask. You have to wear facial shield, where you have to have, there's going to be some splashes and what have you. Okay, you have to put on shield so that if there's any splash, it will not go into your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and that will be a portal of entry for that microorganism. And if you're not immune, your system will break down, and then you get sick, and you pass it on to, if it's contagious, you distribute it. You become a sharing agent. You give it to your family, and God forbid it doesn't result in something catastrophic. All right. So we have to wear gloves, put on PPE, and do the right thing where necessary. Okay. Maintain control of when you are transporting dirty instruments. We normally will transport them in carts. Now, if your department is far away from the OR, it means that you are going to use the hallway, and you're going to share the hallway with patients. You're going to share the hallway with patients' families. You're going to share the hallway with other workers. So you have to be able to control the cart that is carrying the instrument. I don't know how many of you, those of us who are here, Professor Japor and Director, we've done this work before. Sometimes the cart is, no matter how you load it, sometimes you're pushing it to the right and it is going to the left. All right. So you will have to control your cart. It's just like you are behind your driving wheel. You will have to know how to negotiate so that you don't hit the next car in front of you. All right. So, and when you are transporting your cart, you have to yield the way for patients. You have to yield the way for patient family. Okay. And if you have to use the elevator, patients have priority over your dirty instruments. Okay. And when you are traveling or you are transporting your instrument in the hallway that have intersections, you have to be very, very, very careful, because somebody could be coming from the other end of the intersection. What happens? We have some of us are technicians. We are very, very boisterous. We have a lot of energy. Maybe you just returned from lunch and it's your pickup time. You need to go to the user unit to pick up your dirty instrument from the holding area. You are so excited. So you are just pushing the cart, sometimes even riding it with speed, not paying attention. What is going to happen? You're going to bump into patients. You're going to hit other colleagues. You're going to hit family members of patients. And that is not good. So we are advising that when you're doing pickup or rounds and you are using the hallway, you are sharing with other users of the hallway, which could be patients, it could be doctors, it could be nurses, it could be your colleagues, it could be family members. You need to slow down. Don't ride on the cart. Control your cart so that you can keep safety of yourself and other people who use the hallway. And we are advising that do not leave the cart that is transporting the instrument in the hallway unattended. Okay, unattended. Do not do that. All right. Why? For safety reasons. Okay. Maybe somebody is a patient or a family of a patient is standing nearby, placing a call, trying to get some medical information from somewhere. You put this card unattended. Some of these cards sometimes will move on their own and then will hit this. It can be a safety concern. Or this card is contaminated, is carrying contaminated instrument, is dirty. What happens if this card is left unattended, there's no communication on it, that is dirty, somebody touches it, it can bring about what? The person can be exposed to hazardous materials. All right. So always make sure that when you're using the hallway with other people, which the hallway is not dedicated to only central sterile processing technicians, you have to be mindful of other users and then pay attention to what you are doing. And then the next point is I basically explain it even before getting there. You always have to yield to patients. All right. Patients have priority. Now, you may be working in a facility where dirty instrument or contaminated instruments come from outside of your building. That is what we call off-site processing, or it's being transported from outside of your facility or your hospital. All right, meaning that a truck brings it for you to process. Okay, or a truck comes to pick from your end and take it to another facility to be processed. Be it whether they bring it to your end or they take from your end to another facility, they have to follow certain guidelines. Those are the guidelines we are going to look at. Can I get somebody to read me the first bullet. First bullet. Okay, so let me yes. Am I getting a volunteer?
I'll read it.
All right.
Okay.
Off-site processing of contaminated items. When transporting contaminated instruments between buildings or to an off-site processing center, facilities must comply with U.S. Department of Transportation, state and local regulations for biohazard materials.
Okay, good. So when you are transporting contaminated items from a facility to another facility, you must meet DOT regulation, Department of Transportation regulation. And Department of Transportation regulation, we have the federal, we have the state, and then we have the local, okay, or the city. Now, it will tell you that when there is in conflict, when the requirement or the regulations are in conflict, the state law or requirement supersedes that of the federal, right? So the van that is transporting the instrument or contaminated instrument from one facility must be designed to transport medical instruments. It must meet the Department of Transportation medical van or a van to transport what? Instrument. And this instrument, again, must be in closed carts. They must be secured in the carts, and then the carts are secured in the van. So everything is secure because of what? Safety. So trays are secured in the cart is secured in the van. So that when the van is moving, is traveling, say, Long Island to the Bronx, carrying instruments, all right? The instrument will not be shaking in the cart. The instruments will not be falling off. The cart will not flip in the car so that heavy instrument will end up falling on delicate or special instruments and then get them what? Damaged or broken. So that is why we say that if it is an off-site, it has to follow Department of Transportation regulation to be able to move the instrument from one point to another for processing. The next one is the instruments might be secured properly in their containers to prevent damage during transport. Very explanatory. Transport should occur as soon as possible after use to prevent soil from drying, which makes cleaning more difficult. We cannot emphasize enough that instrument needs to move to decontain to start processing immediately after use so that it doesn't dry. The tissues don't dry on the instruments. Right? Next slide, please. Improper transportation of contaminated items poses safety risk to patients, staff, and visitors. So if you don't transport them well, you become a hazard, or you cause havoc to patients, yourself, your co-workers, all right, or visitors. Facilities should develop standardized procedures for handling contaminated items with input from infection prevention and hazardous materials committees. So every hospital should have policies or guidelines as to how transportation is supposed to be done. And you cannot do it without the input of infection control department. You cannot do it without considering the hazardous materials committee's recommendation. You have to work with these two bodies or entities or other entities that have expert knowledge in transporting contaminated or hazardous materials. So for every transportation network in the hospital system, infection control department has a say in what is done. Their input is there to prevent exposure, to prevent cross-contamination, and to prevent what? Injuries. All right. Any questions so far? All right. Yes, somebody has a question? All right. No question. So now, in terms of education and training, we have some professional bodies that have written extensively on how to train or guidelines on how to get knowledge on how to transport contaminated or hazardous materials. One of such professional bodies is AMI, Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation. AMI, Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation. So they have written extensively on how to handle that. We also have what? OSHA. Okay. OSHA is basically occupational safety and health administration. Am I right? All right. So yes. All right. Then we also have what? AON. That is Association of Perioperative Registered Nurses. Nurses also make input. Okay, because they also have section of their training that talks about how to prevent exposures, how to prevent injuries, how to prevent exposure to bloodborne, hazardous material. So they also make input because a surgical operation cannot happen without a nurse being there. Okay, the nurses are always there in the room. The surgical techs are always there. Then the doctors are also always there. All right. So, and like we said, everyone in the operating room has a role to play for how it is prepared, how it is transported to decontamination area. And all these entities, all these professional bodies make input or have written extensively on training staff or training employees how to be able to transport sterile or contaminated instrument from the user end to the decontamination area to start the process of decontamination. So it is very, very important to know that decontamination starts from the point of use. The process by which it starts is making sure that it is prepared, the instruments are prepared safely and adequately enough for it to be handled at Central Sterile Processing Department. Okay, so it is important that all personnel who handle contaminated items are trained, and these include central service technicians, environmental services staff. What do you think? Let me pause here and ask a question about where do you think environmental services staff play a role in the point of use preparation process of decontamination? This one, you won't find it in the book, is apply. Let me see if somebody will apply.
They operate. Environmental cleans up the operating room.
So go ahead.
For microorganisms.
Okay. Yeah. Part of the question is answered.
Keeping the environment safe for the CS technician safety.
Okay, so now let me give you how do they call them, hints, and see if somebody will nail put the hammer on the nail, the head of the nail. So we mentioned that in preparation at the point of use, we have reusable items and we have disposable items. Which people handle the disposable items part of the preparation or transportation?
Environmental.
Good. So they also have to be trained how to dispose of those disposable items. So like the tubings, the drapes, okay, they dispose them of. They have to make sure that they are not dripping. And if there are any drippings, they have to mop them. And if they mop them, what do they put there to inform people that the ground is wet?
Wet sign.
Wet sign. They put a signage telling people, communicating to people that you walk, be careful, the ground is wet. So CS technicians must be trained, environmental services staff must also be trained, carriers and transport technicians also must be trained. Some facilities, we have people who have been hired. Theirs is just to go to holding areas and pick the dirty or contaminated trays and bring it to Central Sterile Processing Department. Or we have third parties which are supposed to transport instruments or dirty instruments from one site to another, like the off-site one. Those are the carriers or the transport technicians. Okay. In some hospitals, they call them runners. Okay. Some facilities, they call them runners. So depending on how the facility wants to title them, they could be transport officers, they could be transport technicians, they could be called runners. Okay. So those people also need to be trained so that you don't speed with the cart excessively and then hit somebody in the process. Drivers need to also be trained so that when they are loading the cart into their van, they secure the cart so that the instruments are not moving to and fro in the van. When the driver hits into a pothole or into a ramp and it goes up and comes down, instruments are not falling apart in the case card. The case card is secured. It gets to where it goes with all the instruments intact. No bruises, no breaks, no cracks. Everything is intact. So education should cover safe handling of biohazard. All right. It is very, very important that transport and how to prepare instruments to be transported is taken care of at the point of use, so that it will cut down the time that we need to reprocess all these all the dirty instruments that come from the OR and then other using sites. Any question? Any question? Any contribution? Any addition? All right. So just as a recap, I'm going to use my recap as a way, as the form of questions and answers. Okay. Let's take turns to mention some sources of contaminated instruments quickly. Director, you take me back to the other slide. I don't want to see this one. Just take me to any slide. I want to ask questions to see if the class remembers what you said. Any place that you can remember is a point whereby you can get dirty instruments or contaminated instruments.
Delivery room.
OR.
The OR, delivery room,
Labor delivery.
Labor and delivery, yes.
The emergency room.
The emergency room, good.
Endoscopic room.
Endoscopic department.
The pediatric.
The pediatric. All right, good. Awesome. So, which in the smaller units, the place where dirty instruments are kept until scheduled peak time, how do we call that place? In the smaller units, in the smaller using department, a room that is dedicated to a dirty instrument being kept until they are picked to decontamination area. What is the technical name? What is the official name for that place?
The holding unit.
The decontent.
Say that again.
The decontent.
No. I'm sorry to say no. Yes.
The holding.
The holding area. The holding area. The holding area. Now let's mention maybe 4 things that we can find or we should find in the holding area. Four. At least 4 things. If you remember anything that you expect or is a requirement to be in the whole area, mention it. That way I know that you will pay attention. Just mention one and then let other people mention.
Biohazard container.
Biohazard container. Okay.
Biohazard signs.
Biohazard sign.
The sharp container.
A sharp container. Okay.
A PPE equipment available.
PPE available. Like, be specific on that PPE.
Gloves.
Gloves. Good. Nice.
Gown.
When you okay, yes. Let's stick to glove. Let's leave it to glove. If you take off your glove, what do you expect to do?
You wash your hands.
So, what do you expect to be in the holding area?
The washing bay.
Sink. Yeah, sink. We expect a sink to be there, right?
Give it to open it.
Okay, good. All right, good. Now, if you delay in removing gross soil on your contaminated instrument, what will be the end result?
Difficulty in cleaning, like before you can clean.
Difficulty in cleaning.
Cause decay and rust.
It will cause decay and rust. There's a whole lot that will happen, yes?
It delays processing.
It delays processing.
And it takes time in cleaning.
It takes time in cleaning. It takes a lot of energy in cleaning. What is the most recommended system of transporting contaminated instrument from the point of use to decontamination area? What is the most recommended system?
It must be transported immediately after use.
It must be transported, yes, it must be transported immediately after use. But in what system are you going, is the most recommended way of transporting it to decontamination area?
With cart.
With cart. Open or close?
Close.
Close. Close. Close. Good. Close. Good. What is the basic requirement for an open cart to qualify to be used to transport dirty instruments? What is the basic thing that an open cart must have to qualify to carry dirty instruments?
It must be decontaminated.
No. What must, let me frame it a different way. What must an open cart have to qualify to be used to transport dirty instruments or contaminated instruments?
Dirty instruments on it.
So, can you say that again? So, yeah, somebody is typing the answer in the chat box, but say it.
Can you repeat the question?
My question was,
Okay. It should have a metallic button.
Yes. So let me say the question again for other people to see if they can. What must an open cart have to meet or to qualify it to be able to carry dirty instruments or contaminated instruments from the OR to decontamination area? It must have something to be able to be used. That is that thing that I'm looking for. If it is an open card, it must have that. If that and that, it cannot be used. And somebody typed, and the person who typed, what did you say again?
It should have a metallic button.
It must have a solid bottom. You remember that?
It mentioned durable bottom.
Yeah, it must have a solid bottom. Okay, and the solid bottom will prevent drippings, spillage, and the rest. Okay, and the instrument falling apart. So if a card has not have a solid bottom, it cannot be used to, an open card cannot be used for transport. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So always remember, these are the key points I'm trying to see. There are a lot that we have spoken, but just trying to see if you were following what we were the conversation we were having. Okay. True or false that a metal container can be put on a plastic or glass container? True or false?
False.
False. Okay. False. Okay. So the other way is what? True. Okay. All right. Instrument must be packed in the cart secured. True or false?
True.
True. Okay.
True.
It is recommended that you leave liquid inside reusable containers back into the decontamination area.
False.
True or false?
False.
False.
False. Okay. It is not necessary to educate central sterile technician how to transport dirty instrument. True or false?
False.
Okay. All right. You don't need facial shield when disposing of liquid. True or false?
False.
Okay. You do not break the chain of infection when you wash your hand. True or false?
It's false.
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 Okay. You guys are following. Director, give me the concluding part of today so that we can take it and get out of here. All right. So, in conclusion, instrument preparation at the point of use and proper transport require interdepartmental collaboration. What are these departments? Can somebody mention someone? Before we mentioned them. It says
Environmental
services, the operating room,
Emergency.
the infection control,
OSHA.
okay, OSHA requirement, hazardous committees,
Commission.
recommendation, all of that. Okay, play
The
at
dots.
the Department of what? Transportation. All of that play. Right. Good. You guys are awesome. Nice. The next point is effective communication and training ensure that healthcare workers properly handle instrument and reduce risk. So if you communicate, where is the communication coming from? You put the holding area, there's a signage. Hazardous signage is there. You're communicating, you're transmitting a message. Environmental services mop the floor because there are drips or there was a spillage. They put wet sign on the floor, informing people it's risky over there. All of that is what? Effective communication. All right? Sometimes the OR are able to tell us that, okay, this patient has maybe cancer, this patient has HIV. They tell you before the instrument come into it's some form of communication of some sort. Okay. All right. Then the third point is by following recommended guidelines, CS technicians help protect patients, visitors, healthcare staff, and healthcare staff while maintaining the integrity of medical instrumentation. Yes. When you follow recommended guidelines, okay, you protect yourself. When you don't mix sharps, reasonable sharps with other instruments, you don't get punctures on your fingers and your hands. Okay, you don't get cuts, you don't get injured. Okay, the process runs smoothly when you remove gross soil. Instruments don't get dried up, so it takes shorter time to process them. Cases are not delayed. Patient outcomes are great. Patient get better service because instruments arrived on time. They were not put on anesthesia for a very long time. All of these, when we follow the guidelines, we are able to do that. All right. Next slide. I don't know whether there has anything there. That's about it, right?
Yeah, that's about it. Yep.
Okay. So before I hand over to the director, let me see if anybody has any question for me. Okay. Silence means everything has sunk in. So give yourself a pat on the shoulder and say, well done. Director, over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor John. That was a
Thank
splendid
you.
performance. I hope everybody enjoyed just like previous classes. Please, I see that some of you are not taking your quizzes and practice seriously, especially the last quiz and practice. Only about, I think, 15 people did it. Some 3 people are lagging behind. Please make sure that you're doing it. Other than that, I guess we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Good night, guys.